What's up, everybody? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel, and then follow me on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter so you guys don't miss any of our content over the course of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. Obviously, the First Takes and all the other takey shows out there have been talking heavily about this idea of Kevin Durant and him needing to go somewhere else, or whether or not he made his own bed and all these other things. And my question for you guys is, and we'll start with you, Carson, what is your take on Kevin Durant post Golden State in terms of just what he's prioritized as a basketball player and the types of situations that he's put himself in?
Well, I don't think that he's done a very good job of selecting situations and of emphasizing the sort of big-time talents who he wants to join forces with. And I think the biggest reason for that is that he has not yet joined a team that is going to be an above-average defense, which is just a mandatory requirement if you want to contend. The 2021 Nets were 23rd in defensive rating. The next year, they were 19th. Then they were 13th when he got traded. They were an okay defense as Claxton had come into his own and whatnot. And then this year, the Suns are 18th in defensive rating. And the reason for that, to me, is that he has prioritized playing with these highly skilled, but small, and also, by the way, extremely injury-prone guards. Like, we saw 2.5 years of him and Kyrie. They played 74 games together. Now we've seen him play 5 games with Bradley Beal. You can't really say that you would be surprised by either one of those totals, given those guys' track records. And he's basically put together these big threes where you have no plus defenders, and you have these very skilled perimeter shot makers, right? Like Kyrie is a basketball artist. Devin Booker has this incredible all-around skill. I mean, the post game as a guard, right? The mid-range, all these things that as a basketball purist, I think KD personally really values, because like that's the kind of basketball that he plays. He plays beautiful basketball as a pure scorer. But then you have these gaping deficiencies where there's no consistent rim pressure out of those guys. You are going to be basically guaranteed to be a poor defense because of who you've prioritized. And then there's just some skill set redundancies there. So he's basically left these rosters with almost no room for real plus two-way role players. Like Phoenix doesn't have any, where I would say like that guy's legitimately good on both sides of the ball. He's just going to play his role at a really high level. Brooklyn, they had Bruce Brown. Ultimately, they let go. They had Nick Claxton, who again had grown into a really high-level defender, and then KD left that situation. So it just feels to me like he is sort of prioritizing hoopers, just like guys whose games he admires, and not thinking about, okay, how is this actually going to lead to championship basketball? And that's repeatedly cost him.
I mean, Carson hit it on the head. It's like if you were playing a pickup game and say, new set, and you've never seen any of these guys before, it's like a one-game scenario where you're going to run full court fives with some guys in a pickup setting, and you see these guys making all these tough moves and these tough buckets, and they're crafty and they're nasty. They're hoopers. Those are the guys you're going to pick because you're like, oh, it's a game of fives. We're just getting buckets. NBA basketball is different, and I think to hand your keys over to a player and to let him construct your entire roster, and obviously he's not doing that top to bottom. Your GM and your guys are finding the role players, but you're letting him allocate the majority of the cap and all of the money that you would be able to put really good two-way role players behind him, and you're giving it to, like you said, Carson, guys with skill set redundancies. Nobody's going to doubt that the Brooklyn Nets weren't tough. Yeah, they had 3 of the toughest buckets ever. Nobody's going to doubt that the Suns aren't tough. They've got 3 of the toughest buckets ever. But winning an NBA title and winning a pickup game are 2 very different things, and you need an entire roster to go and do that. And I don't know, I just don't think that players are the best general managers. I think it's just kind of wrong to let a guy walk into your organization and say, I want this guy, and this guy. As an organization, I think you have to put your foot down at some point and say, this is not the best use of our resources. We need to go and get more depth. It's not worth us putting all of these resources into just stars. That's just not how you win a title.
Yeah, I think, as is always the case with these takey topics, it's just complicated. Like, for instance, there were stretches there with the Nets where they looked really good. Oh, yeah. So like, and it is worth mentioning, if anything, I think Kevin Durant's a victim of some bad luck here, in the sense that like, but you have to factor in some of it being a risk that he took. There's a version of this story in Brooklyn where guys stay healthy and he wins a title. Like 2021 was one of the most wide open seasons that I can remember in modern NBA history. And like, I know Kevin Durant was all like, oh yeah, maybe if my foot was behind that line, I was fatigued, guys were hurt, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's nice and all. You beat the fucking Hawks. You beat the Hawks, okay? You beat the Hawks, and then you go to the finals, and by then Kyrie's probably healthy again on his ankle, and you probably beat Phoenix. Like, I really do think they were close. And a lot of this is like the winner tells the story. And it's funny because like I've had people nonstop all year talking to me like, oh, I can't believe you think the Lakers are a contender. They're not a real basketball team. They have no chance of winning. And it's like, what's not a brave take? That the one team that gets to hoist the trophy, you get to take a victory lap because there's a 29 out of 30 chance that you're correct with these other teams, right? Like, that's the thing. It's like, it's really easy to go back and be like abject failure. And it's like, they were this close to achieving the most difficult thing to achieve in the game of basketball, which is hoisting the Larry O'Brien trophy. And so some of it is a little bit like revisionist history. That said, there are some issues with availability with Kyrie that were documented beforehand. There are some issues with availability with Bradley Beal that were documented beforehand. I really liked the focus on redundancy from Carson. And I talk about this concept all the time in basketball. Like, everything it has nothing to do with your 2K rating, so to speak, and the individual talent of each player. Every basketball team is a product of the sum of its parts. Yep. And every time you add different basketball players together, there are certain things they do that complement each other well, and there are certain things that they do that don't complement each other well. And if we look back through NBA history, I would argue the Denver Nuggets last year are the least redundant basketball team I've ever seen. Like, literally, I've ever seen. You could not construct 5 more completely different basketball players in that starting lineup that fit together so perfectly. The Golden State Warriors, there's no redundancy there. They are all so different, that 2022 team. Even the Milwaukee Bucks, every single one of those guys had a unique skill set that they brought to the table. The Los Angeles Lakers, like, it is a consistent theme throughout NBA history that the teams that win at the end of the day have an assortment of different kinds of basketball players. I do think it's interesting that Kevin Durant, and his desire to partner with Kyrie and James Harden, and his desire to partner with Devin Booker and Bradley Beal, signifies to him that Kevin's view of the best way to win basketball games is to have this incredible amount of basketball skill on the floor and to be able to outskill people. Now, it's really easy for us to be like, that doesn't work because he came this close again. That said, I would argue that my personal opinion is very of how to win basketball games is different than that. I would like what Kevin Durant brings to the table, and then I'd like a superstar next to him that brings an entirely different skill set to the table. That's great at different things, And from that standpoint, even if we look back at like LeBron and Kyrie, why did that work? Because they were so different, right? They bring different things to the table. Even LeBron and Anthony Davis on so many different levels, and so to me, I think it's okay to point out that Kevin Durant tried to take a very alternative approach, and that there are more proven methods that Kevin Durant neglected. That said, I think it's revisionist history to just say he made the wrong decisions because he came close, and we don't know what's going to happen in Phoenix yet. And I do believe that there's some potential for them to gain some steam and to make a run. So my thing is like, and Logan, you brought this up too. Like, you're right. Players don't make good GMs. LeBron James is, in my opinion, the second best basketball player to ever touch a basketball court, and arguably the smartest basketball player to ever touch a basketball court. I thought the decision to blow up all of the wing talent and athleticism they had to bring in an incredibly flawed star that everybody in the world knew was going to make the Lakers a worse team overnight, and you find out that LeBron was actively pushing for it behind the scenes, that's the same type of mistake, right? It's just we give LeBron so much more leeway because he has 4 freaking championships, right? And he made it to the Western Conference Finals again last year. But like, I think Kevin Durant is getting targeted a little bit here just because it's an easy NBA storyline in the middle of the season.